last song was "Everybody Knows Your Name."
Amazing.
We're close to Boston, and it was
For
popular in the
sure,
time.
for
Yeah,
sure. Have you actually like heard the lyrics and or like read the lyrics, the actual words?
yeah.
They're kind of messed up.
They're kind of sad. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, anyway, you got a beer, good buddy?
I do. I've got a dragon's milk.
Ooh,
Um,
nice,
this was
nice.
a this was a gift from the last time I watched The Neighbor's Dog. She knows
Oh,
what I
nice,
like. Nice
nice.
bourbon barrel aged stout.
Hmm.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. I have of course, a double IPA from Treehouse called Wonderment. It's one of their winter holiday double IPAs. And I'm
Lovely.
also, we're joined at the Vet Tech Cafe today by a couple of my cats. You can see Julius up
I
there in
see
her
them.
hammock, and then Martin is over my shoulder in his little house there. They
Nice.
came in to record with us today. So,
I'm downstairs in the Airbnb where the pets are not allowed.
right. Nice, nice, nice. First off, you were just on vacay for a couple days.
I
You actually
was.
got away
Uh
over
huh.
Christmas, and how was that?
Well, I brought my laptop, and I was
Why?
like, "Oh, what if something pops up that I'll need to deal
Oh
with?" The only
goodness.
thing that I used it for was fantasy football. You'll be
Okay,
happy to know
okay,
I didn't do
okay.
anything that did not relate to fantasy football. Um, uh, had nothing to do with work. Didn't really do anything. Well, I did one thing here, but it wasn't my fault, and we'll talk about that when we get to that article. Um, but lots of sun. It was like 80s most of the time we were there. We were only there for a few days, but
And where'd you go?
we went to Cancun, but we were in Tulum, which is about
Uh-huh.
an hour south of
Hmm.
Cancun.
Yeah.
So anytime, like, we had to go up to one place to go to Isla Mujeres,
Hmm.
which was like an hour and a half drive to get up there. So a lot of driving there.
Yeah. Hmm.
We were in one of those all-inclusive resorts, which is a little bit of I don't want to say it's a scam, but it's a little misleading because it makes it seem like everything is available all the time, but you had to have reservations to go into any of the restaurants. So it was like, I mean, we ate a lot of buffet stuff because that was the stuff anyone could walk into. But
Yeah.
it was good to get away. It was good to like um, have a few days to relax and not think about veterinary stuff. I had a lot of non-vet days there,
Great.
and I didn't tell. Did I? I don't know if I told you this. We came back and we got to the airport and checking our bags, and the woman, because we were supposed to go to JFK to go through customs and then come down to Raleigh. So our travel day was going to be all day. We weren't supposed to get
Yep.
home till like 8:30 at night. And the woman taking our bags said, "Oh, there's a direct flight. Do you guys want a direct flight?" And we're like, "Yeah." And we had to pay like an extra, I don't know, $75 extra per ticket to do that, which at that
Still,
point, whatever.
still. Heck yeah. I mean, that's however many hours you get back.
It was an extra. I think we got there around 1:30 or so, so we saved like 6 7 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other part is
You're
that
worth
when
more
we
than $10 an hour.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah.
The other part is that when we got back, we got emails from JetBlue saying, "We're so sorry that your flight got canceled. Here's a $50 voucher." And we looked up, our flight to JFK got canceled, so we would have been stuck there
Oh, wow.
for another day if we didn't take the deal on getting the direct flight. So we really lucked out with that. Also, we
Wow.
had a teenager with us that was getting cranky, and that was our motivation. Like, we got to get home. I don't want to
Yeah.
be traveling
Right.
an extra 6 hours with her.
Right.
So we really lucked out by getting that
All the
direct
way
flight.
around.
And the only reason we didn't book that flight is that flight was I think it was at like 10 o'clock, 10:30 or something like that. And we didn't think we'd have time to get from our hotel to the airport through check-in, all that stuff. We're like, let's just play it safe and book the 11:30 flight, not the 10:30 flight, even though that means we have to go to
Yeah.
JFK and all that stuff. But man, thank God we took that deal, because we would have been there an extra day, like trying to figure out where we're going to stay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dealing with a cranky teenager.
Right.
I mean, and and I told Robin, I said if we had missed that flight, there's a good chance that none of us would be speaking to each other for another week.
Oh
But yes,
man.
it was great. Good to get away. Um, we want to travel more. That's one of the things that we want to do, is to travel more. Not necessarily Mexico every time,
Sure.
because things are expensive. Like we got there and we're like, oh, we'll get a taxi. It'll be cheap. And it, I think that I think that each trip was like $150 to take a taxi, which is a lot, but whatever. We're on vacation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we want to do more traveling and go to more places and do more things like that.
Yeah.
So that was a good. We learned a lot about what not to do going to a foreign country.
Hmm.
So hopefully next time things will be a lot easier.
Nice, nice, nice.
And you did okay holding down the fort here at the cafe slash
Yes,
tap room.
yes, yes. It was a busy couple of days, but we got through. And yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no
And
major
you had a
snags
nice
or anything.
Christmas.
Yeah,
We didn't do anything Christmassy at all.
nice, nice.
Not a single thing.
I worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Molly worked Christmas Eve, so we did Christmas with my family a couple days before Christmas, and then Christmas with her family the day
Yeah.
after Christmas. And yeah, it all worked out good. It was a good few days,
Well,
and
and at this age, Daphne's easy enough to fool into thinking it's Christmas today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's at the age where she opens one present and she's so enamored with whatever was under the paper that
Yeah.
she doesn't even want
Or
to
the
open the
wrapping.
next thing, because she doesn't want to give up what she just got. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so it was a lot of fun though. She was actually able to like open presents this year and all that
Oh,
stuff.
good.
So yeah, yeah, she had a lot of
That's
fun.
fun.
She got some fun stuff, so she's pretty jazzed. Yeah.
Good. Good. Good.
So on to taproom y stuff.
Tap
So
roomy stuff.
yeah, the first thing I know we want to talk about is the I guess the AAVSB announcement, if you will, about what they're doing with VTNE eligibility. And there's been a lot of sharing and discussion and comments and things online. But so basically, I'll just read what their press release said, and this went out December 21st, so this is like 9 days old now.
Yeah.
But basically, there's two amendments now. So their press release says after a thorough exploration of options and weighing their respective advantages and disadvantages, the AAVSB board has decided to amend the VTNE policy. The changes include two bullet points. First, to have the AAVSB approve pre-graduate testing for enrollees of AVMA, CVTEA, and CVMA accredited schools upon verification of good standing from the school, allowing testing during the final semester of the program. And the second bullet point is to amend the VTNE eligibility policy to have the AAVSB evaluate and determine the eligibility of on-the-job trained and alternate pathway candidates per each jurisdiction's qualifications. A lot of verbiage there for, frankly, not a lot of change, I don't think. I think just maybe some things that have already been in place and just haven't really been done before, and maybe some new stuff too. I don't know. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts we'll start with bullet point one. Bullet point one, allowing students to take it before they graduate. I honestly don't understand what the benefit of that is.
Yeah, same.
Unless they're doing that students that are in their final year of school can take it for free. I don't really see the benefit to allowing them to do that.
Yeah, and it is.
Uh,
It's just the final semester.
right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
the final
yeah,
semester. Like
yeah,
I don't understand what do
yeah.
they hope what are they hoping to gain from that?
So, the only thing I can think, and from my seat, I think there's a far easier solution instead of having these stupid 1 month testing windows. Just make it a year-round test.
Yeah,
They don't administer the test anyway. You go to a testing center who administers tests Monday through Friday every week of the year. Um, so the only thing I can think of is that it allows them to take it potentially one testing window earlier, perhaps while information is fresh in their mind. Because I used to tell
yeah,
my students, and maybe you did the same, like, because again, with the way the testing windows is, and at the time we had to take a separate California state exam as
yeah,
well. And I used to tell them, like, don't after graduation, don't say you're going to study for 6 months and then take the exam. Like, as soon as you leave school, information is actively leaving your
Yeah.
brain every day. Take the exams as soon as you can.
Yep.
Force yourself to study the material. If you take 6 months off to study, you're going to dork around for 5.5 months and then spend 2 weeks studying. And so the only thing I could think is that maybe it allows them to take it one testing window sooner,
When they're
maybe while they're
fully
still in
immersed in
school and
school.
still immersed in school and study habits and all of that. I don't know. Arguably, there's some benefit there, but I would argue make them schedule it while they're in their last semester of program or of the program for like immediately after graduation and have it be a year-round test. Like,
Right.
because I think and a lot of people have had this comment that I've seen online, and I think it carries a lot of weight. They do this already with veterinary students and the NAVLE, where you can take the NAVLE, the national exam that the AVSB puts out for veterinary students. You can do that in your fourth year, but they have already done all of the classroom by then. They're
Right.
only on clinics at that point. So they've
Right.
already learned all the information they're going to learn. Now it's just clinical application thereof. Whereas for us, in our fourth semester, we are still in the classroom learning. Like, so it's a false equivalency there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I
Well,
guess I
I think
just don't.
that's school dependent too. Like ours, I
Sure.
think they did 2 years, and then like the last term, the last 10-week term was them doing their externship, and they had a VTNE prep
Hmm.
course that they did.
And I'll say, cards on the table, I didn't go through an AVMA program. I was
Neither did
alternate
I.
route, and I taught alternate route. So I might be speaking some myths, truths here because I have no affiliation with the
Sure.
AVMA program or how, like, what the final semester looks like. But from what I saw online from other people that are in those programs or teach at those programs, there is still some didactic learning
Yeah.
that occurs then.
For us,
And so,
that last 10-week term was externship and a VTNE prep
yeah,
course.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Or
Uh,
it wasn't a prep course, it was more like VTNE study, where I think the program director like gave them literature
yeah.
and things to look over to study for.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that would be my biggest takeaway and question. And I don't know what led to these changes or
Yeah,
like if there
well,
was
at the
any public comment leading up to it or if it was just like a closed door their executive board discussion. I don't know why they thought this kind of change was necessary, but I don't know. To me, it just
well,
this is
if you look at
2023. Like,
the beginning of the article, it says several AAVSB member boards recently asked the AAVSB board of directors to consider changes to its exam eligibility requirements to address the veterinary team
oh, right,
shortage
right, you're
and
right.
allow veterinary technicians to be in practicing to their full ability immediately following graduation. So I get that.
So okay. So again, immediately following graduation, they should be able to test the
Right.
day after they graduate.
Right.
I mean, that's to me, that's the solution. I don't. This is 2000, about to be 24 here
Yeah.
in 2 days.
In 2 days.
Why are we still having a 1 month application window
Right.
and a 1 month testing window 3 times a year?
Yeah.
Like, uh, you know, that's like back in the day where you had to like go to the state capitol and take a paper and pencil exam,
I
and
had to drive to
that's
Delaware to do it.
yeah. I mean, that's how you had to do it back in the day. But like it to me, for what they charge for application, if they can't figure out how to make this a year-round test, like
Yeah.
that to me is the solution,
Yeah.
and not, you know, I don't know. I think I saw some other comments online too about perhaps concern that maybe if somebody passed the VTNE prior to graduation, that maybe they wouldn't finish out the program or follow through with
Yeah.
that. I don't know. Perhaps people that would do that exist.
that's a
I
small
think it's a
percentage of people.
small
Yeah.
percentage, but again, you know, like I would hope, and we kind of talked about this off air before we came on, that if you're paying all that money to go through tech school, you might as well
You might
walk
as well
away with the
finish. Yeah.
you might as well finish and walk away with the piece of paper you're going to need
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 years down the road. Who knows how far down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I understand the premise, like what you just read, but to me, it's the wrong solution.
Yeah, and I don't feel like that's I, I don't feel like that is addressing the vet tech shortage, because you've got people that are in school. They're already,
Yeah,
like, if they're going to pass
right,
school, they're going. That's not an issue.
right, right.
Let's move on to bullet point number 2.
Yeah,
To amend the VTNE eligibility policy to have the AAVSB evaluate and determine the eligibility of on-the-job trained and alternate pathway candidates for each jurisdiction's qualifications. So I was a on-the-job trained.
same.
I needed, I forget what the number was, like 8,000 hours, which was like, what is that, like 3-4 years, something like that. I don't. I'm hoping that their amendment is going to be more than just you've been here long enough. I feel like there needs to be, I don't know, maybe a secondary exam for the VTE to allow them to pass it. Because granted, for me, it was like 15 years ago when I did this. So the all I had to do was submit and have one of my management team verify that yes, I had enough hours. And I remember I had been in the field. I had been working for almost 12 years. So I was well beyond the hours limit. That wasn't the issue. But like doing all that, I was like, really? That's all I have to do? Like, just prove that I've worked in the field long enough? That seems like it's not enough.
Yeah,
I feel like, and granted, the article does not say what their amendments are going to be for the eligibility requirements, but I feel like there should be a letter of recommendation, one or two from doctors. I don't know if there should be a secondary exam for them, like a qualifying exam. I don't know if that's
yeah,
something that we could do.
yeah.
Um,
See, like in California, it's not a true on the job because there is an educational
right,
component
right.
requirement. It's just abbreviated and it's far less semester hours or credits, I guess, if you will. Um, but there's still like an education component.
So
It's just
what do they have to do in California to get to take the VTE
so you have to
through that
have
alternate pathway?
yeah, it's like 4,470 or something like that hours. It's essentially
Okay.
2 years full time.
Yep.
And then it's 300, I believe, 300 maybe classroom hours.
Okay.
And so most programs that offer alternate route, which there are programs that have both an AVMA path and an alternate route path, depending on your, career arc and whether you're
Right.
just starting out or if you've been in for a while. Um, but there is an education component, and it's, there are requirements within that what you're required to learn in that subset of hours. Um, and so it's not truly on the job, but you have to have the on the job experience to
Gotcha.
qualify to go that route. But I guess, I think the bigger discussion I see online with this is like I almost feel like we are making it easier to go on the job instead
Hmm.
of
Making it harder.
AVMA route, and like I'm sorry that I don't think the team shortage is a we don't have enough new people in the field problem. It's a we are not making this a sustainable career
Right.
and we are losing too many established people
Yep.
problem.
Totally agree.
And that's not AVSB
No,
salute. That's not a
yeah.
them problem.
Right.
That's not a problem for them to
That's
fix.
an industry
That's
problem, not
that's
not
an
a testing
industry
problem.
problem. That's every clinic problem. Um, so all they're doing is hoping to push more people into the field who are going to leave again in 5 to 7 years because we haven't actually fixed the
Right.
infrastructure that we're bringing them into. And I think that's my biggest struggle is who like with younger generations than us, like they're not going to put up with that nonsense,
Right.
you
We
know?
don't need to fix the problem of people getting into this profession. We
Mm-mm.
need to fix the problem of people leaving this profession, because
Mhm.
I think that's the bigger issue right now
That's the
is
bigger issue,
people
and to
leaving.
me, and like we just said, that's not a AAVSB problem.
Right.
That's an industry problem, and the solution isn't to try to, you know, lift up the red tape and
Right.
let more people in because they're just going to be gone in a short while
Yeah.
because the industry is not right.
Well, and just kind of thinking of our sports collective knowledge, uh, athletes. So think about your athletes. They retire at 39. We think, oh, that's crazy early. Like they're retiring before they're even 40.
Yeah.
And if we take that window of retirement into the vet tech profession, they're retiring at 26,
Yeah.
27.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
before they hit 30, they're
Yeah.
they're retiring from this profession.
Yeah.
So, and it's something that we need to fix, the
Yeah.
people leaving, not so
Right.
much getting more
Right.
people in, because you're just filling the conveyor belt of people
Right.
that are just going to walk out the door in 5 to 7
Right.
years.
Right. And I know, the funny thing is that the AAVSB also administers the NAVLE, the qualifying veterinarian exam.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see the faces of the people on the AAVSB board if somebody proposed an alternate route to getting a DVM degree. Like, because I guarantee it, Dave. There's probably 80 to 90% of the VTS holding people, I bet, could pass the NAVLE without a
Mm-hmm.
problem. And if
Yeah.
that's the only, like, there's a veterinarian shortage, sign me up. I'll take the NAVLE tomorrow.
And there's
I have
arguably,
absolutely confident that I could pass
I don't
that
have
tomorrow.
the numbers on this, but I would imagine that the veterinarian shortage is a much more dire need than the tech shortage is.
I would say so.
I don't
I
know.
would,
I don't know the numbers on that.
yeah,
Someone
I
correct me,
mean,
but
yeah, but I think again, the problems are the same. Like it's not necessarily how many veterinarians we're graduating and bringing into the field. It's that we've done a piss poor job, frankly, of making the field sustainable.
yeah,
And that's not just us on our side, that's veterinarians, that's across the board.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And again, that's not something that I applaud them for trying to fix the problem, but I
yes.
just don't think
Yeah.
this is the right way.
Right, right. Yeah. It's like they are coming up with every other solution than
Yeah,
the actual solutions that will help.
yeah.
And
It's
it's unfortunate.
not to trigger anyone, but it's kind of that same problem of gun control, of the mass shootings. Like, guns are the problem. Oh, but maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Like, we're fixing everything around the actual problem.
Right.
Where don't come at me for that, people that are listening that are extremely pro gun.
But no,
That's the way I equate it.
like it's like we say all the time when we talk about these problems with our guests or on tap rooms, we need the veterinarians' help in like
Hmm.
fixing some of these things. But what we don't need is the veterinarians to tell us what our problems are and then tell us what our solutions are. We
Right,
need them to listen to us to say, these are the problems. This is what would actually fix the situation. But we're not the ones that set wages. We're not the
right.
ones that get benefits. We're not the ones that do all of these things. That's where we need you to come in.
Yeah.
We need you to lead by doing that.
Well, not only that, and no offense to Molly and Robin, they are fully supportive of
Yeah,
us
of
and what we
course.
need, but they
It,
don't have the
right,
power.
right.
We
Yeah,
need the people that are at the board level to have our
yeah,
backs to make
yeah,
those changes, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
it may just be a thing of waiting out the older generation and waiting for the younger
Maybe.
generation to get into those positions to actually make changes.
Maybe, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like, are those that are actually going to be interested in governance and those kinds of things, next generation on down the line, are they actually going to be those that have our best interest? Like,
Right.
or is it going to still be that same group, that same like picture of people, just 30 years younger? And
Yeah.
in 30 years, they're going to be those same people. Like,
What we need to do here's the solution, everybody. Uh,
write
Jeff
this
gave me
down.
the idea earlier. Write this down. Uh, we need to allow for veterinary technicians to take the NAVLE. Then we can become veterinarians, and then we can infiltrate the boards and make the changes that we as technicians need.
Yes, yes, yes.
It'll be like a Trojan horse situation.
Yes, yes, I love it. And I can think of no less than 6 or 8 guests that we have had on this
Oh
podcast
yeah,
and multiple
easily.
times that A could pass that exam and B would be excellent leaders.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and we could get some stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do. We need
Yes.
to scrap this idea and push for letting technicians take the Navly, and then we can infiltrate from within.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I
Easy,
love it.
easy peasy.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
should get
Yeah.
that done by, like, I don't know, the summer, right?
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Easy peasy.
2024 goals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, what's
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 next here?
next?
So I saw this
Oh
online.
yeah,
So I know as veterinary technicians, again, we cannot be AVMA members and we cannot get JAVMA as a result of that. Thankfully, my wife is, of course, a veterinarian
we
and
get it at the house too,
yeah, AVMA member, and she gets
and
JAVMA.
she
But
doesn't read it. She just gives it to me like,
Molly doesn't either. And then
yeah,
same thing. I read the table of contents,
yep,
frankly, just like I do
same thing.
JVAC, and see what interests me, and then I read that. But I saw
Yep,
this article online from actually one of Molly's classmates posted the heading of it, and I was like, "Ooh, I need to find that." So, in the reason, a couple reasons I want to talk about this. Number one, Dr. Rourke, who's been on our podcast, we were just
yep,
on his
yeah,
recently. He was one of the authors on this, and the the article or the study is called "Securing Lethal Means for Suicide: A Focus Group Study Exploring Perceptions and Barriers Among Practicing Veterinarians." And so I'll briefly read the objective and I'll read the results and then we can kind of discuss it. I think that's like a good
yeah,
synopsis.
yeah.
So objective, and mind you, again, this is JAVMA, this is all veterinarian focused, but I think we can still extrapolate this out to veterinary
And we can share
technicians.
it to we can share the link, but I think you're only going to get like the abstract.
Yeah, I do, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the objective, veterinarians are at higher risk for suicide than the general population, and one reason for this may be veterinarians' access to and knowledge of pentobarbital, a common suicide method in this population. One possible approach to reducing suicide risk is means safety. This study examined the acceptability and feasibility of means safety protocols in veterinary workplace. So, results survey responses indicated that 30% of veterinarians reported storing their pentobarbital unlocked at least part of the time. During focus group discussion, participants perceived work life balance or being overwhelmed as the most common suicide risk factor in veterinarians, with normalizing mental health emerging as a primary way to improve mental health in veterinarians. Additionally, adding an extra lockbox for pentobarbital or firearms emerged as the most acceptable and feasible means safety method. Finally, at post-test, veterinarians increased in willingness to implement storage protocol changes and were more likely to endorse concern about a coworker's suicide risk than concern about their own suicide risk as a reason to change pentobarbital storage methods. Um, I we've talked the whole life of this podcast about mental health.
Hmm.
Anytime we hear about a suicide in veterinary medicine, we talk about it. Um, and I've said a couple of times, I don't know, maybe it's my morbid curiosity, but I sometimes I wish one thing that doesn't get discussed is how that actually went down.
Hmm.
And sometimes I wish it was because I think that could actually lead to change. Like if people are actually using pentobarbital from the clinic to euthanize themselves, then I think then 100% everything probably in this study absolutely is relevant to replies. If it's something they do at home via any other means or not getting drugs from the clinic basically, um, and and I think that would be a huge help in understanding where we actually need to put up barriers because I know certainly when I worked at Tufts, everything was under lock and key. It was super legit. For controlled substances, if you went to the Omni or the Cubex, you had to have two people
Two
enter in there,
fingerprints, yeah.
right, do the whole thing. Obviously, it's not that way in most private, smaller practices. Maybe
Right.
things
Not
are in
everyone has that.
lockbox, but there's always somebody that has access that can access things when the clinic is closed, or somebody that has the ultimate key, and so like I think this is actually a really potentially huge thing is like if it's something where a decent percentage of people that are carrying out suicide are using things gained in the clinic to do so, improving those protocols and not leaving drugs out. I mean, they're in the methods and things here. It talks about drug logs and like how those can be falsified and like it talks a lot about like these are all good steps to take, but they don't individually they don't prevent
Right.
the problem. Like there has to be multiple barriers in the way, and I think that's just one thing that like I don't know. I think in some ways, at least in those that maybe again it takes place either at the clinic or with means acquired at the clinic, and maybe that's that taboo thing that we don't want people to know that like our protocols aren't good or that they had access to drugs and what have you. But like to me, that's a big thing we need to talk about.
I'm sure that there's got to be a way. Like, I'm sure when this happens, like the police are involved. There's a report that happens. There's a post mortem exam or what have you. The information is out there on how they carried out their suicide. It's just that we don't. Not that we need access to it, but somebody needs to have access to it to
Yep.
make a study to say these are the suicides that we saw this year. These are how they were carried out,
Yeah.
and looking at those means of
Yeah.
carrying that out and figuring out ways to correct that.
Yeah.
Did you mention in there that there are clinics that have firearms on site?
Yes, so there are and there's basically two categories of that: A, self-defense, or B, if those are used as a means of euthanasia. So I'm guessing maybe large animal or like
Oh,
wildlife or like, perhaps like,
yeah,
darting things or
yeah.
things like I
I didn't
I
think
don't
of
know.
that.
Yeah, I don't know what to what extent, but basically it was I think just looking at things that could cause lethality
Yeah,
in a clinic. So, and I mean, there's other drugs that can do
yeah.
that too.
Like a
I mean,
combination of
it doesn't
multiple different
just,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't just have to be pentobarbital, but, just thinking about, I remember back in the day, and maybe you were in clinic at the same time, but I want to say this was late 90s, early 2000s. There was a pentobarbital shortage. We couldn't get it, and we were
Mm.
having to euthanize pets. We were having to like ket valve them down and then basically give them a huge hit of potassium chloride to stop their heart. It was absolutely
Yeah,
miserable.
I don't. Back
Um,
then, I was in general practice. That wasn't much of
and
an
so,
issue
like,
for us.
shortly, and thankfully, that was a very short window that was occurring. But then, once that like went away, and we were able to get euthanasia solution again, I remember the doctor I worked with at the time kept a bottle like in a locked cupboard in his office so that if we ran out and we weren't able to get any, we had a backup bottle. But like, there was no accounting of that. Like,
Right.
and I'm going back 25 years now,
Yeah.
but like, I, does that kind of stuff still happen today? Like where there's like just not good accounting, and I think we all hate doing drug counts and inventory and what have you, but when it comes to these substances, like,
Well, in speaking as someone that does relief, and I do find myself in general practices, the control of their controlled substances is not as good in. And I'm not trying to call out general practice, but just my experience, the emergency practices that I've worked in, most of them have a Cubex or one of those fingerprint systems where two people do need to sign off on something
yeah,
like that. Um, in the general practices, yes, some of them do have that, but
yeah,
majority not so much.
yeah,
And I think that may be where some of the problem lies, is that they don't have those things.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you said, after hours in an ER, there are no after hours. There's
right,
no such thing.
right,
But there, even still, if there was one doctor in the building, when you have that Cubex system or that fingerprint system, they can't physically take out
yeah,
drugs by themselves. They just
right,
can't. And not just euthanasia solution, like hydro,
hmm,
buprenorphine,
fentanyl,
propofol, sometimes fentanyl. Yeah, those things are not accessible by one person.
right,
Um, and actually, I will say that there are some places that where to get something like midazolam for like a seizure, you don't need a second fingerprint, which
yeah,
I don't know that anyone's
yeah.
going to carry out
Yeah.
suicide with midazolam, but
Yeah, yeah.
but
I mean, I will
there are
say,
ways of getting around it. I guess
yeah,
is what I'm saying.
I will say in my time at Tufts, we had, and it was this way for all of our controlled substances. On the Omnicell, it was you could set it up that way that you needed a second login, but we elected to not do that because there was so much pushback that what if in an emergency situation we needed this like right now and we couldn't find somebody and like again, like I mean, I used to cry this from the rooftops. Like that's not the solution. If the problem
No,
is that there you can't find somebody to put in their second credentials, the problem isn't that the one person that needs access to the drugs now gets access to the drugs now. The solution is you need more people. You
right?
you you need to have more people available to be able to provide that.
Yeah.
Like that's actually the problem is that you keep it at such a bare minimum.
Hmm.
Everybody's off doing stuff and you can't find somebody. And like
Yeah.
so it's just they kind of changed that to the towards the end where they started at least for euthanasia solution they were requiring a second
Hmm.
input, but for the all other controlled substances they didn't. And it's like I, you always wondered, like, gosh, I mean, somebody could easily take 10 mils of fentanyl out for a patient and take it home. And
I heard a story. I forget who told me this story, but someone that had been fired had access to propofol and went with a butterfly into the bathroom and tried to inject themselves with an overdose of propofol to end it. And I don't know who it was, but it was a place that I worked at previously, and somebody told me that story, and I said that is a huge problem that you have propofol that accessible
right,
to be able to do that. And propofol is one of those ones where I don't. It's not technically
it's not
controlled,
controlled. Yeah.
but most places are treating it as controlled because
Yeah.
you can easily kill yourself with that. Um, but I feel like the cubic system, the fingerprint system, I forget what the other one was called that we used. But those systems are there and hopefully are preventing some of this stuff. But
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, it's like a would you rather's. There's always a loophole somewhere,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and I think we need to figure out ways to. And it goes back to figuring out how are people carrying out these suicides. Is it controlled substances, and how did they circumvent the system that was in place, and how do you close that loophole?
Right. 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 And honestly, sharing that information, like
Right.
with our colleagues, that like, hey, so this is what happened. This is how it happened, and like now we need to find a solution to try to prevent it in the
I would like
future.
to think that
And
somewhere there's a database of that information that's just not shared with the public.
perhaps, and maybe people know about it
Yeah.
and are doing things, but I think that's like, and I think the whole part of this study is like putting up those temporary barriers, like the
Yeah.
and I'm not going to quote anything because it's been too long now, but we talked about this. I think maybe the first year we were doing this podcast where we talked about something Dr. Rourke said that like a lot of times suicide, especially in our profession, is like not a snap decision, but it's something that like I need to do this now. I need to get out
Yeah.
now. It's not there. Certainly, there are people that it's like a long thought out thing and a well thought out thing, but a lot of times it's this thing that's just now. And the more barriers we put in place to be able to lengthen that period of time, perhaps the more time they'll think about it and realize it's not the right decision.
Right.
Um,
The length of time between having that thought and having
Right,
access
and
to the means
being
to do
able
it.
to carry it out,
Yeah.
yes, and so and I think that's, like, ultimately what I get out of this study is that, like, the more barriers we can put in place and the better we are at record keeping and what have you, and look, I mean, I know we've all worked in clinics, or maybe some of us still do, where we know everybody. We
Or we
absolutely
think
don't
we do.
think, or we think we do,
We
and
think we
there's
do.
like we don't have to do that stuff at this clinic because we don't have to worry about those people, and I think that's kind of why with general practice versus emergency or specialty medicine, in emergency and specialty medicine, turnover's high. People are always coming and
Yeah.
going. There's always a new door code to get in the
Well, and not
building.
not only that, not only is the turnover high, but the volume of people is
The volume
high.
of people is really high, and in general practice, a lot of times that's not the
It's
case.
a much more small.
Especially
Yeah, it's much
it's
smaller.
much smaller. A handful of staff, usually there for a long period of time if it's a good work environment, and so it's very easy to be lax on some of
Yeah.
that stuff, and especially if you've never had those protocols in place, to try to implement them is like,
It's like pulling teeth. Yeah.
right, it's pulling teeth, and it's like,
Why do we have to
do
do
we
this?
do we
This is
really
so
need
this is
this?
so
Why do we have to
useless.
do this? Or, those, and it's like, it's just, I mean, frankly, it's just good practice. And so I would challenge you. Here we are just before New Year's. Maybe not necessarily a New Year's resolution, but just improve the protocols around controlled substances in your
Yeah.
practices of all sorts, of all sorts.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and,
so,
and not just the euthanasia solution, but like
mhm.
all of it, and improve your protocols, because that, I mean, we've said this so many times before. Like, one little thing could save a life.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And if it's just like a locked cupboard and one person has the key,
Yeah.
um, like what does frankly what does that actually accomplish? Like,
Right.
if you have a lock with two locks that requires two separate keys, don't give one person both keys. Like, like just those little things that you think, it's such a pain in the butt. We don't need to do it. What if that person's in a room and I need to get in it right? Like, you go get them out of the room. Like,
Well, and I've worked in places where we've got that lock that goes on the cabinet, where if I really wanted to, like in my younger days, I could rip that door off the hinges,
heck yeah,
just pull right off.
yeah, heck yeah,
Not like in the heat of the moment. If I really wanted to do that,
yeah,
you
yeah,
weren't going to stop me.
yeah, yeah. And especially like if you're the last person to leave and you're cleaning up and you're just frustrated and whatever else and you're mad, rip the cabin open and, like, so again, just those little things just to delay, like, add on a few seconds,
Right.
a couple minutes, whatever it may be. And I think that's really what this study was getting at. And I 100% agree.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we don't want people leaving the profession, but if it's that or leave the
Or,
profession,
yeah, then
just
get
leave the
out,
profession.
get out, get
Get
out.
out. Get out. We will
Absolutely.
help. We will applaud you for doing that.
Yeah.
We don't want you to leave, but if
Yeah.
if your mental health, if it's between one more person staying in this field or one more person staying on this earth, stay on the earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Well,
let's end on something positive, shall we?
yes. Let's talk about 2024.
2024 goals. All right. Well, I presented this to you in a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, and obviously I listen to 1,000 times more podcasts than you do. A lot of them will reach out at this time of year to say to their listeners, what do you want to listen to? Give us ideas, give us stories that you want to listen to. Give us guests. We always ask our guests, who do you want to put in your seat? Caffeinators, who do you want us to put in
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
chair across the
Yeah.
two of us? Of course, we're
Right.
oceans away, but who should we put in our seats? We've got a list of, gosh, we probably have 10 or 12 people that are
Yeah.
on our list
Yeah.
of ones that we are wanting to interview in the immediate future. But we are always open to
Yeah.
newer ideas, newer guests,
Yeah.
things that we haven't heard from,
Yeah.
people we haven't heard from, ideas that may be in your
Yeah.
clinic that you even if you're like, would they want that? Do they really want that?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
We
hurt to
do.
ask.
We do. Like, I mean, I can't think of, unless it's something where, really, I think the only thing we ever turn down is when companies want us to interview a veterinarian to sell
About
their
their product,
product.
yeah.
Yeah. That's basically it. Like,
Well, and
if
what do
it's
we do when we get those emails? We say, is there a technician in your company that can promote that
right,
and
right,
talk about what it's like working for your company as a
right.
technician?
Yeah.
That's what we
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
because this is
Absolutely.
a podcast for technicians. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
how many non-technicians have we had on?
A handful.
5, 6, 7 over the, I don't know how many
Yeah.
how many episodes are we on now? Like
100
140,
and something.
something like. Um, but all the episodes that we've had with non technicians have been how do you utilize technicians? What is your view of the profession? In kind of steering the conversation to, yes, you're doing this, but how do technicians impact what you do? So if you've got something that can
Yeah.
promote this profession, obviously we want to hear from them, even if
Yeah.
it's like we have somebody that we're talking to that is a or a veterinary student
Hmm.
that we want to talk to because we want to understand what they know going through the veterinary school. How are technicians viewed by you, by your colleagues,
Yeah.
by your classmates?
Yeah. And that'll be a great
Um,
discussion. How would you feel about
yeah,
taking the VTNE in your fourth semester?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
why are you for that? Why would you be against it? Like, yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah,
so yeah, caffeinators, for 2024, if you think of anything interesting or you know of anybody we should talk to or yourself, or you know of anybody that's blazing a cool trail,
yeah.
yeah, we for sure want to talk about it.
And
Uh,
we're planning our Phoenix trip. We've been
yes.
conversing.
Hmm.
We're going back to Phoenix in March, I
In
think is
March.
the
Yeah.
plan.
Yep.
We decided that no offense to Florida, but we decided that Phoenix was a great time, and uh, Jeff and I are huge baseball fans, and the one thing that we looked at in relation to that was, yes, Jeff is an Angels fan and they have spring training in Phoenix, where I'm a Red Sox fan and they have spring training in Florida. The difference is that, gosh, how many games did we go to in
Yeah.
Phoenix in a
Yeah.
span of like 3 days?
Yeah, everything is basically within a half hour of each
Within a
other.
half hour to an
All
hour.
the teams, and in Florida, they're spread all over the state.
It's at least an hour, 2 hour drive to get to the next
Yeah,
stadium. So,
yeah,
as much as I want to go see my Red Sox in spring training, I'm more happy to go to a variety of games than than seeing my one
yeah.
team one time.
Right.
I'd
Yeah,
rather go to a bunch of different games.
yeah, yeah,
And I just love going to the different stadiums. Like the stadiums that we went to last year, like were so vastly different. There wasn't one thing that I was like, it's the same as the last one. Like that, the
right.
one for the Rockies stadium where we saw the Rockies and the Dodgers, that was
Yeah,
like an MLB
I
stadium.
know, I know. Yeah,
That was
it's
crazy.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, we're gonna go do that again in March, and hopefully we'll see some caffeinators there. Maybe we'll plan to be at a brewery at a time and see if
Yeah.
anybody shows up or what have you. Because I know
I'm
there's a
gonna
few people in the Phoenix
this year
area.
I need to prep because I don't drink as much beer as Jeff does anymore. And like the first day, like I was like, oh man, I don't know that I can hang with this dude anymore. I'm gonna have to like prep before I get to Phoenix.
I mean, I could also back it down a little bit.
No, I don't want to control you, buddy. Like
Uh,
literally, when I was on vacation, I had 2 beers. Everything else was all like mai tais, margaritas. I had 2 beers, and like after the second beer, I was full. And I was like, when we go back to Phoenix, I need to like train to get to hang with Jeff because man, I'm not a young man anymore. I'm an
no.
old dude, and you're not that much younger.
I'm
How old
not
are you now? You're like 40,
45.
45? Yeah, you're
45.
like
Yeah.
5 years younger than me,
Yeah.
and your beer.
Yeah.
I cannot drink as much beer as you
Speaking
do.
speaking of 45, I went and saw the doctor this last week, just like for, annual checkup or whatever. And he's like, "Congratulations on turning 45. I'll get you a colonoscopy referral." Like, okay, great. Good to see you too, doc.
Don't. I mean, Robin's going to listen to this, but don't tell her. But I don't think I've been to a doctor since I was 45.
Oh gosh.
uh, yeah,
Maybe
because it
maybe
was.
that should be your 2024 goals, caffeinators. Take care of
Okay.
yourselves. Check in on
Alrighty. Yeah,
yourselves.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, because it was shortly after Robin and I were together, and she's like, if you don't go to the doctor, I'm not going to go get my breast cancer screening, and I know you want me to do that. And I was like, all right, I'll go to the doctor. And I went to the doctor. I've never been back.
Gosh.
The games we play.
Yes, yes, for sure. Well, caffeinators, happy New Year to every one of you.
Yes.
If you're working on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, may the clients be nice, the animals be good patients, and may your shift end on time. and
And
you
this
get
will
your
upload
breaks.
on the 31st. So
Yes, yes. So
Happy New
happy New
Year.
Year to all of you. Thank you very much for staying with us and continuing to tune in wherever you're listening from. And special request to any of you that are listening to this from another country. We would
Yeah.
love to talk to you about what it is
Those are
you
some of our
do,
favorite episodes,
where
right?
you are, and all about what it looks like to do what you do in the country that you live in. So absolutely special shout out to you. Hope everybody has a great New Year's, and we will see you again in 2024.
All right, bye guys.